Let's face it, business technology is frustrating and complex. So how do you make sure it works for your team? To make IT right, start the discussion at go-domain.com. You're listening to Discussions by Domain, a podcast for business leaders. Our discussions may be with people you've probably heard of before, but the majority of our guests are in the trenches, professionals like you and I, with the same challenges and struggles of keeping up in the Northeast. They're implementing strategies, overcoming hurdles. They're leading the fastest growing businesses in our region. My name is Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships at Domain Computer Services, and the host of this show. When I'm not talking with business leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of Domain and the ups and downs of our own growth journey, as we intend to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome to another episode of Discussions by Domain. Today we have the pleasure of inviting Lindsley from New Jersey Blockchain Center to talk to our audience about all the cool stuff that's going on in blockchain. And he just had the pleasure of spending a week in New York City at the annual blockchain conference. And I wanted to invite him on to talk about this topic, talk about what he's doing with the New Jersey Blockchain Center, and how businesses and even students can get involved in this new technology that's changing not just cryptocurrencies, which I think we hear a lot of hot stuff about, but also industries, even in our backyard, like Johnson & Johnson and logistics companies. We're surrounded by Amazon and Wayfair and all of this. I think this technology is really going to be on the forefront of a lot of new and cool, exciting things.
Absolutely.
So, Lindsley, welcome.
Yep. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's dig right into it. Today is Bitcoin Pizza Day.
That's right.
Tell us what that means.
Well, we're recording this on May 22nd, which is Bitcoin Pizza Day. Bitcoin was launched with the underlying blockchain technology back in 2009. And in the early days, it was just the developers that were working on it, and they were sending a few Bitcoin back and forth to each other for fun. But on May 22nd, 2010, one of the early Bitcoin core developers put out a post on one of the boards and said, "Hey, I'm hungry and I'm lazy. I don't feel like going out for food. If anyone feels like sending me a couple of pizzas, I'll trade you Bitcoin for it."
Okay.
And so somebody who read the board ordered a couple of pizzas, had them sent to his house. I guess they paid on their credit card or whatever it was. But and then he sent them 10,000 Bitcoin for those two pizzas, which at the time was worth about $41 because Bitcoin wasn't worth much at the time. But he gets some ribbing because at today's prices, those pizzas cost him about $80 million. had he held on to those 10,000 Bitcoin.
The most expensive pizza that he ever bought.
So happy Bitcoin Pizza Day. There's a lot of fun things like that in the lore of the start of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. It wasn't planned that we were doing it on Bitcoin Pizza Day. It just happened to fall that way.
Yeah, no, definitely. What was planned was that last week you were going to be at this annual blockchain convention, and we thought it was a perfect time to get together and discuss, the recap of that event. So I'd love for you to dive into couple points here on what were the main points that you learned about last week, or even cool and exciting things that you didn't even know about that you're like, everybody should be looking out for this.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, New York City actually hosts what they call NYC Blockchain Week.
Okay.
As an annual kind of all things blockchain and cryptocurrency in New York City. And the anchor of that is a conference called Consensus, which is put on by CoinDesk. And last year, at the height of ICOs and raising money and Bitcoin going up to almost $20,000, there were about 10,000 people at the conference last year.
Wow.
It was just crazy. There were almost too many people to move around.
Yeah.
But things have slowed down a little bit. But still, last week there were 5,000 people in New York from all over the world there for the conference. And it's not just Consensus, but many other events and meetings that go on around it. And one of the things I think that was really on display was the fact that because we were this year not in the hype cycle of ICOs,
Yes.
and a lot of those people and the people marketing those ICOs were not there, what you find is that with what's being called crypto winter, which was the reduction in the market prices of most of the cryptocurrencies over the past year, the people that are left are the diehards and the people that really believe in the technology and in the business use and in the future of blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I love it.
So, we weren't talking about Lambos and all that other stuff, but what we were talking about were enterprise solutions that are being built and deployed in the blockchain space. We're talking about, new developments in cryptography and in consensus algorithms that are used with blockchains. And so it was a much more subdued but educational event. A lot of good ideas. There were some new vendors there as well, of people that have started new companies or new businesses around creating blockchain solutions, helping businesses get onto the blockchain type technology. Yeah. One of the new things that's going on in the space is you'll start hearing about STOs a little bit more, which are called security token offerings. And STOs effectively are taking real-world assets and securitizing and digitizing them. Okay. And then putting them on the blockchain to make them frictionless in terms of trading and offer greater liquidity. So, for example, there were some organizations there that are tokenizing real estate. So,
interesting.
Buildings, commercial buildings, or private investment properties, where rather than selling the property, they could break it into chunks of $1,000 worth of value and create a digital token. And then individuals who want to invest in a property don't have to buy the whole property.
Wow.
They get to buy one or as many tokens as they'd like.
Okay.
And then those tokens can be traded at any time amongst other people who are interested in buying or selling those assets without the hassle of having a closing transaction and a real estate transaction and all the things that go with buying and selling a property.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And why I think it's interesting is it opens up potentially a field of play that many people could never get to because they couldn't purchase the whole commercial building or whatnot. But they wanted to be in that asset class, and this is giving them the opportunity to potentially do that.
That's right. And it allows owners of the assets to take some of their cash back out. They could still choose to own half of a building, for example, and then without having to sell the asset, can get funds back. And this securities tokenization is being discussed for use of things like, high value artwork, for example, or everyday securities, debt instruments that, corporations want to sell, and even tokenizing the stock shares of everyday companies so that rather than what we currently have as the old-fashioned, there are literally stock certificates that are printed, that are stored, and there are custodians of those. And that's typically why when you settle a transaction, it takes 3 to 5, sometimes 7 days, because they have to go through that clearing process. Yeah. So again, utilizing blockchain technology in the financial services field is moving things to a much more seamless, in a lot of ways, more liquid.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that all of a sudden that property or that artwork becomes a lot more liquid, a lot more easily transferred to somebody else than it has been in the past.
That's right.
So let's get into a little bit more about, you mentioned ICOs. Can you tell just quickly what that means for people?
So an ICO, and for the most part, they're almost dead right now. Yeah. But an ICO was the digital equivalent of an IPO, an initial public offering, when a company would typically sell its stock. Okay. What the ICOs were doing, ICO stands for initial coin offering, and these were companies that were looking to raise funds to develop blockchain and cryptocurrency technology platforms. So they would sell the coins as a way to generate funds up front that then they could fund their development.
Gotcha.
And really, since then, it's been clamped down on because these have been deemed to be securities by the SEC, which really have to follow the same rules and regulations as what an IPO would. Okay. And that's why, a lot of these have settled down, because a lot of them were thinking, hey, we're getting around these rules, but in reality, it was just catching up to them.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, let's move on to how this technology, blockchain technology, can be utilized in business. So we've talked in the past a little bit about logistics. We've talked about, I brought up the example to you, which I'm interested to learn a little bit more about, of the whole title insurance when you buy and sell a real estate transaction. Do you mind sharing what you learned at this blockchain week in New York on these topics?
Sure. So, at its core, blockchain is a digital ledger.
Correct.
And so a ledger is used for tracking transactions. And because of that, a lot of the work that's being done in the enterprise space for blockchain deployment, one area is supply chain. The supply chain market is still very fragmented in terms of the players. Many of them use systems that don't speak to each other. And in some cases, smaller players aren't using systems that are online at all. They're still using spreadsheets and paper documentation. So the ability to take your supply chain process and take those documents and put them onto a blockchain solution, which allows them to be seen by all of the participants in the process, but also using the cryptography. And we don't have time to get into all the details of how blockchain works, but cryptography is used to secure the information that's stored on the blockchain so that it can't be changed or forged or altered after it's been stored on the blockchain. So if you think about someone in a supply chain process who at some point may decide they want to go back and change the documents, for whatever reason, in a paper-based system or in a system that they are controlling the database, they could do that.
100%.
But this takes that out of the equation. So IBM has been doing a lot of work in that area, and Walmart has been doing a lot of work in that area. And if you remember, about a year ago, there were a lot of recalls with romaine lettuce and other things.
Yes.
So Walmart, in piloting their supply chain blockchain product, has mandated that all of their leafy green vegetable participants will get on their blockchain. I think the original target was for the end of 2019.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're on track to hit that, but just the fact that they've made that statement means that you'll start to see more of this proliferate. And this is going on in supply chains all around the world. Ports are using it. Shipping companies are using it. And a lot of these solutions are being developed and deployed as we speak. And I think we'll start to see an improvement. And as well, we should start to see costs come down because of the fact that IBM and Maersk did a study that found that about 20% of the actual shipping cost was of their pilot was tied to just pushing the paper around.
It's amazing. I was going to mention that. From the sounds of it, it looks like cost savings is definitely going to be there, at least for the organization, the business itself.
Sure.
Hopefully, at the end of the day, that transfers it to the end customer. But even in the mention of Walmart and the leafy greens, at least the end customer is probably going to be safer. It's going to be a safer consumption for them to potentially avoid some of these things that are happening in that area as well.
Absolutely. And I want to get back to the point you mentioned, too, about title registry.
Title insurance. Yep.
So as most people know, when you buy a piece of property, you take title to that property, and that title gets registered in a land office.
Yep.
Typically, the government maintains that. The problem is that when those paper documents are stored in a file somewhere in a government office, they're susceptible to fraud.
Yep.
Anybody can walk into the office and bribe that individual, that government employee, and have the title transferred into someone else's name.
Correct.
And you wouldn't know it till you go to sell your property and find out, unfortunately, you don't own it anymore.
Yeah.
And as well, every time you buy and sell a property, that same property you have to get title insurance for and have a title search done. And I know the last time I did it, that was about $400 worth of the closing costs.
100%.
On the properties.
Not to mention the insurance that goes with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So by a couple of countries are working on this. I know Sweden and the UK and a few others are working on putting their land registries on the blockchain. which will, again, make it much more transparent as to who owns that property. But there's some real world applications aside from just storing it on the blockchain. When Haiti was hit by the hurricane that devastated them a few years back, the building that contained all of their land records was destroyed. And first of all, just having them on a digitized system would have allowed there to be better backups. But think about the rebuilding effort now. Or think about a place like maybe Cuba, when the revolution happens and Castro comes in and all of the private land is confiscated by the government.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hopefully at some point, if Cuba becomes more democratized, what do you do about getting that property back to the heirs of the rightful owners? A blockchain solution stores that information and prevents it from being, deleted or tampered with. So again, these are things that we deal with every day. But government services can deploy blockchain, businesses can deploy blockchain for enterprise solutions, and as individuals, there's the cryptocurrency piece, which is using blockchain for sending money back and forth to each other as well.
Let's jump back into that a little bit, because I know that's usually the hot topic, is the cryptocurrencies, especially when the market's blowing up and coming down and all of that. But we talked before we started about the application that is now allowing large merchants to accept blockchain or cryptocurrencies as payment. And why don't you touch a little bit about that? Because it's very interesting to me on big names, Whole Foods, I think Amazon, you mentioned a couple others.
Sure. So one of the challenges with cryptocurrency in its current form, and we talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency being in the early stages as if we were back in 1993 and the internet was kind of developing. If you remember back in those days, before Netscape existed, there was not really a good user interface for finding things on the internet. There was no Google at the time. But technologies developed and the space expanded. But we're still back in those early days now with blockchain and crypto. The user interfaces are not as intuitive. And from merchant standpoints, accepting cryptocurrency, there's still work being done. There's actually solutions now that are being rolled out that will provide point-of-sale solutions for the merchants to be able to accept cryptocurrency. But again, if they accept Bitcoin, then they have to decide, will I hold the Bitcoin or do I convert it to US dollars or euros? Last week at Consensus, an app and a program was announced that allows users, customers, to spend cryptocurrency at major retailers and allows the major retailers to accept cryptocurrency. But what the application does is it ties into an exchange and it allows that cryptocurrency to immediately be converted to fiat.
Okay.
And so while the retailer, the Nordstrom or the Whole Foods says, yes, I'll accept your Bitcoin, what gets deposited in their account will actually be the US dollars, for example.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it facilitates the transaction, makes it a little easier for people on both sides.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, there's a lot of people who got in early and have a lot of crypto. And I know people have bought homes and cars with Bitcoin. And I actually read one study about a year and a half ago that had said that some of the small businesses like cafes around the world that have started accepting Bitcoin, we're seeing their business jump 200%, 300%, 400%. Wow. Just because people who have crypto that want to spend it need someplace to go. And they also want to support businesses that support crypto.
Exactly. No, that's very interesting. And I'd love to keep an update on what that actually looks like on the businesses that are accepting it. And every once in a while, I'm starting to see we accept Bitcoin here.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty interesting. It's very cool that we're right in the start of this and as this continues to grow. So let's talk.
Just one more point on that. Yeah. What's interesting is most people don't even know here in New Jersey, you can go look online. There are a number of Bitcoin ATMs where you can walk into a corner store and use a Bitcoin ATM machine and actually buy cryptocurrency.
No way. Where's like one off the top of your head?
Well, I know there's one near where I live in the Bridgewater area. Okay. It's just a little corner, deli type shop. And they've got the little sticker in the window. You can buy cool. Bitcoin here. But you'll start to see those things more and more as, as the whole market matures. And also as we start to get a little bit more clarity around rules and regulations about how crypto is viewed and how the government, addresses it.
100%. So recently, you have completely started the New Jersey Blockchain Center. So I'd love for you to share with the audience what that means, not only for businesses, but also students, high school students, college students, and what you're looking to do with that, where it is now, and the future of the New Jersey Blockchain Center.
Sure. So to take a step back into how I got here, my background is in small and mid-sized business and operations, and I've been a COO, and so got involved in consulting and working with business owners and entrepreneurs. And as I started to learn about blockchain, and I realized that it would begin to impact businesses probably several years down the road, but I wanted to be out in front of the curve so that as part of how I support that ecosystem of entrepreneurs and small businesses, I wanted to be able to know enough about blockchain that I could help them navigate those waters. As I got into it myself, I started to see that one of the biggest challenges in the space is education and having people understand what it is so that they can learn about it and adopt it. Deloitte's done some studies at one point that said the single biggest blockade to acceptance at the executive level in corporations is knowledge and understanding of blockchain.
100%.
So I just started doing presentations,
Okay.
and I would present to, organizations, groups. I've done a few at public libraries, and then I've done a few for private lunch and learns for clients. And I really found that there definitely is a need for education. People are really looking for solid information that they can sink their teeth into and really get their brains around what it is and how it works.
Yeah.
And so I started to incorporate that into this whole focus of growing and developing the blockchain ecosystem in New Jersey. We spoke earlier about the Consensus Conference. We spoke about Blockchain Week, New York City's Blockchain Week. Earlier this year, the New York City Economic Development Corporation opened a blockchain center in Chelsea.
Awesome.
And so, unfortunately, New Jersey doesn't have any of those things, and we're far behind. And I go into the city quite a bit for meetings and meetups and seminars and conferences, and you can sometimes find 2, 3, 4 events going on at the same time in an evening in New York, and not find those same types of activities in New Jersey. So I felt what I could do is help, bring awareness to it, create the blockchain center for it to be a central place for people to go learn about blockchain and cryptocurrency, find courses, find meetups, find other events that are going on in New Jersey. And just, we even have a link on the site where if you want to buy Bitcoin t-shirts or hats, we'll point you in a direction there as well.
Awesome.
But we've got some work to do in New Jersey to catch up. I don't think we're terribly far behind that we've missed the opportunity, but we've got to help get blockchain into our universities.
100%.
I've been doing some guest lecturing and helping work on some curriculum to help put blockchain into some of the universities because it's not yet in the textbooks. It's not being taught at least in New Jersey. There are some places, NYU in New York City has some classes that are involved with blockchain. Stanford, Berkeley, MIT, a lot of prestigious schools are doing things around blockchain. We need to catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
And not just at the college level. I'm also excited to hopefully be able to do courses and workshops for kids in high school.
Perfect. Yeah.
Because I think to get them excited, number one, by the time they get out of college, they'll probably be using a lot of cryptocurrency and digital currencies because it'll become more mainstream.
Yeah.
But also blockchain will be something that businesses are much further ahead in deploying and using. And particularly students that are interested in becoming developers or going the computer science route, there's a huge demand for blockchain developers. So if I can help kids identify that early, it helps them along that path.
I completely agree. I mean, when I see whether it be AI, blockchain, machine learning, I mean, these are technologies that if they can get introduced to at a young age, their potential for job opportunities is going to skyrocket throughout their career.
Absolutely. Well, last year in 2018, the largest growing job posting on LinkedIn was blockchain developer. And there are blockchain development jobs that start at $225,000, $250,000 a year, just because the demand is there and the supply isn't. And for every developer who has blockchain skills, there are approximately 14 available jobs.
Yeah, it's very similar to, and not as the extreme, but on the cybersecurity side. It's amazing the job opportunities if you know what you're doing.
I was just reading the other day that there are going to be way more job requirements for cybersecurity in the next several years than there are
It's
talent.
amazing. It's amazing. And there's a whole, we don't have time today, but there's a whole security component just to blockchain.
Absolutely.
And how to keep that chain secure and the records secure and everything like that. All right, let's give, I'd like to jump quickly into the advice. We're kind of perfect segue into the advice that you would give a high school student, a college student that's looking at this as an exciting opportunity. Maybe they got caught up in the cryptocurrency craze, but they actually want to understand the true technology behind this. What type of advice would you give them?
Well, it's funny. I think most high school and college age kids in some form are using a version of cryptocurrency or digital currency without even knowing it today, because if they're gamers and they're utilizing currencies within a gaming platform, that's very similar to using a digital currency. So I think it's important for them, well, really for all of us, it's important to always look at what's coming over the horizon so that we can prepare ourselves. But if you're in high school or college and you've got your whole career ahead of you, you want to start looking at what are the jobs of the future and what are the skills that we're going to need to have those jobs of the future. So if you think you're interested in technology, before I got involved in blockchain, I didn't realize the whole world of cryptography, for example, that was out there. Yeah. Cryptographers are now the rock stars of the computer world. But if you're interested in math, right? Mathematics and cryptography are very strong. Coding is strong. And then just all of the science, even within economics around game theory and designing consensus mechanisms for blockchains. There's a lot of different ways you can get involved. It's not just about writing code, but there's those other components to it which could be interesting. And so if you're looking at those fields, I'd advise you to do a little research, learn a little bit about it, because right now, if you were to go look at where do I want to go to college, there are different options where some schools have some of the classes that you can get involved in and others don't. And hopefully the ones that don't, we get them up to speed soon. But you want to take those things into account.
Yeah, 100%. And I would even say for the kids that are out there that maybe you don't want to go into coding or stuff, it's similar how I found myself in cybersecurity and yourself blockchain. I love cybersecurity. I love securing things and the concept of it, but I have no interest in actually doing the technical piece of it. But I have a really broad interest in communicating these technologies, these thoughts, these processes that need to get done to a person. And there's, I think, a huge opportunity, just like you're doing right now, in saying, I understand this from a conceptual level, and I can go out and teach it, educate people, and communicate to potentially executives all over the world on what this actually could do for their business. So that's another avenue to go as well. So you mentioned CoinDesk puts on the Blockchain Week or helps host this with Consensus. Can you talk a little bit about what CoinDesk means to the education in this space and what you've learned from it?
Well, CoinDesk is a news and reporting site. They've got reporters and analysts that scour, the world for news and stories that are going on. It's a good starting point, I think, for someone who's just coming into the space to get a good feel. Okay. They cover technology, applications, regulation that's going on around the world in the different countries. They write about cryptography issues, coding issues, currency issues, you name it. And then, they do quite a bit of analysis on what's going on in the markets and what's happening and what's trending. So, they do a great job putting on the consensus show.
Okay.
And if someone's looking to, just start dipping their toe in the water and read and, want to, have a place where they can have a cup of coffee in the morning and read a few articles about what's going on in the space, that's a good starting point.
Cool. And then finally, let's touch on a nonprofit, a foundation that's most important to you in the development of what you've been doing. And I think you wanted to give a little shout out to the alma mater from both of us.
Yeah, well, being that we're here in Jersey and, we both went to Rutgers.
Yeah.
And I've been involved with Rutgers in different capacities for many years, even, since I was an undergrad. I would just say, if anyone's looking for a place to help support education and ongoing development, the Rutgers University Foundation is a good cause, a worthy cause that helps students and helps provide whatever they need. But we might as well keep the support here in our state, 100%. In Jersey, and support our future students.
Yeah, and as an advisory board member to the cybersecurity certificate program there in professional education, we got to get them on the blockchain board. I mean, they got to get up and going on this space. So I really hope you can help push them along to get it. I know in their MBA programs, they have a huge supply chain and logistics program.
That's
and
right.
This is changing the space in that area very specifically. So hopefully Lindsley can get the Rutgers on board there.
We're working on it.
So I want to once again thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thank you.
you
Well, I
coming
appreciate
out.
being here. It's a pleasure for me, and I enjoy helping people learn something new and get exposed to something. And if anybody's interested, feel free to reach out. You can reach us, New Jersey Blockchain Center.
Okay.
The website is njblockchain.io.
Perfect.
And you can go there and sign up for our email list or our meetup group, or just send us an email and keep an eye on there for new developments that are going on in Jersey.
And what's the best place for them to reach out to you? What's your favorite social media platform for them to reach out to you on?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Lindsley Medlin, and otherwise they can get to me through email at the Blockchain Center.
Perfect. Very good. All right, guys, thank you so much. This is Lindsley talking to us about blockchain here at Discussions by Domain. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll definitely be featuring more of this type of stuff in these different spaces as it affects all our businesses here in the Northeast. Thank you.
And once again, happy Bitcoin Pizza Day.
Don't pay too much for your pizzas. Good stuff. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device. To help us get the word out, share with a friend, leave a review, and check out our discussions on the web at go-domain.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.